right. So we just finished Duane Ehmer's sentencing hearing for destruction of government property, depredation. The prosecution was asking for, so they started with a base of 6. They added a level 6 because of the loss, the amount of the loss, for $40,000 to $70,000. A lot of that money comes from the fact that they had to sift through all the dirt to see if there was any artifacts that were in the dirt. There was not any artifacts, but they're still being charged for that charge of sifting through the dirt and replacing the dirt, which $40,000 to $70,000 is a ridiculous amount for the trenches that were put in. They wanted a +2 increase for use of the excavator as, what is that, a dangerous,
was it an assault excavator?
For use of the excavator as a deadly weapon, and the consciousness of using and making that trench to intimidate law enforcement. They argued that the trench was not a fortification. It was on the other side of the parking lot, and it wasn't one of the situations where you would come driving and then you would drive into this trench, and so therefore it wasn't endangering people's lives like they're saying, these federal law enforcement's lives. It was on the other side of the parking lot, so people could come and go safely, and so they argued that for a while. It looks like she did give the +2 there. Then they asked for another another +2. Or no, the defense wanted a -2 for a minor role adjustment. And this is where it kind of got interesting, because they say Duane had a minor role in this. He was only on the excavator for 5 minutes, and the government argues no, it was 8 minutes. It's like 5 minutes, 8 minutes, based on the amount of time that Jake Ryan was on the excavator. And so they're talking about a major role versus a minor role. The government says, well, he was still there when he got off the excavator. It was technical difficulties, and that's when Jake came in and kind of took over. They had discussions, and he stayed on the property to finish this. And his lawyer argues that, he was only doing this. He was only digging a little foxhole, and Jake Ryan came to make it this large trench, and all of these different things. And this is one of the things that it really kind of got to me inside, is the way that they kind of, it seems like the lawyers don't support the other lawyers or the other people's cases. And I know going through the trial in Nevada, our first time in, there was a time where, one person's throwing another person under the bridge, and even for us, there was people that would be like, well, my defendant didn't go prone on a bridge. And luckily for us, that was quickly rectified, and we got everyone on the same page, and they all worked as a cohesive unit. Because what I'm seeing inside, and I'm not sure, this is like, I've not been to many sentencings, maybe it's something that they do more in sentencing. I wasn't here for the Oregon trial. I don't know if that's how they acted, but this is the feeling that I'm getting, is that when you're not working as a cohesive team, even in these sentencing, things can happen that then get used against someone else. So she did give the 0.2 reduction, stating that he did have a minor role in it because of his 8 minutes versus the 45 to an hour that Jake was on the excavator. And the judge herself even stated that we don't know that he wouldn't have continued using the excavator if he didn't have technical difficulties. Apparently the technical difficulties is he hit an old cable and had to check if they had lost power, and he was having problems working the machinery. And so she's saying, well, we don't know if you were just trying to dig a foxhole like you're saying, or if you would have continued digging for how much longer if you hadn't run into those problems. But she did still give him the minor role in the 2-person role. So there's 2 people here, and Jake had the major role and Duane had the minor role. because it was less than 10% of the time that he was on the loader that made the destruction of the federal government property. And then we go into the terrorism charge and enhancement. And the government argues a lot of facts here. And here I saw the judge say, you know, we're not going to go with this because a lot of the argument, well, first the defense said, you know, their argument, the government's argument here is basically almost the exact same as their conspiracy argument, which by a jury he was found not guilty for. So the judge kind of went along with that. She said she's not giving the terrorist enhancement charge. You know, because the jury did find him not guilty of the conspiracy, and his actions were the destruction of federal property, and so she wasn't going to go ahead with the enhancement. Now, the 2-point enhancement she did give for the government had to do with him having a weapon with him during the crime. Now, the weapon he carries is antique, never had it out of there. She ended up agreeing that it wasn't the weapon for the 2 points. She agreed that it was his conscious fact that he made that trench with the thoughts that if there was an attack, they would use it, and so he did it knowingly. So then they talked about the situation would have been less stressful if they hadn't dug that trench. And like I said, the judge says the court had to make factual a link to the intimidation and the coercion for the terrorism enhancement, and they didn't do that, and so she didn't do it. So no upward or downward acceptance. So that leaves them with a point system of 14. Then they did the -2, so that gave them a point system of 12. That carries a sentence of 10 to 16 months. At this point, a tribal person gets up, a tribal representative, and talks about the fact that these lands are sacred to their tribe. The lake especially there is sacred to their tribe, and there's a bunch of burials around there, and that when the excavation was happening, it disrupted the tribe a lot. And they've worked with Fish and Game to protect these burial spots. This is all very interesting because, once again, they spent $40,000 to $70,000 to sift through the dirt where there was no artifacts. There was no burial ground that they were actually digging there. They had found an old cable line there, so it wasn't the first time it was dug. It was at the end of a parking lot. So here we do feel for the tribe, you know, and this is some of the things that I saw that she said, the powers that be. So she's like, the powers that be told me we couldn't go down there and fight the day that they were doing the digging. We had to wait till now. The powers that be being the government that gave them a hefty sum, that these restitutions are going to the tribe. And, you know, the tribe, the people that were out there actually believe the land belongs to the people. That includes the tribes people. They believe that those people should be out on that land, and it shouldn't be federally governed by these bureaucrats that were treating their artifacts badly. Duane even said in court, talked about how he had been on the tribe side and talked about that ever since he got out there. Duane had a very touching speech that he went into. You can actually find that on his Facebook page. I'm not gonna go into it and try to butcher any of it. It was very emotional. He got teary at times. I'm going to quote him. "History is one of the most important things we have," and he stands on that. And he was talking about, you know, absolutely with the tribe and their lands and how he believes in that as well. So then the judge takes a minute. He also says he's the sole provider for his 13-year-old daughter and his widowed mother. He's a veteran. He is a small business owner. And these are some of the reasons that he should possibly be given probation. His lawyer then goes in to bring in Sean Anderson. And the fact that Jake and Duane were never offered plea deals. And here you have Sean Anderson, who shotguns into the sky. Made videos calling people to come out to the refuge and to shoot and kill officers that may stand in their way. and that she believes that the court should go away from the sentencing guidelines and be more lenient to him, because here we have Duane, who has been a minor role in this destruction of federal property, and you have Anderson, who stayed after. Duane apparently went back in and tried to help talk other people out, got 4 people to leave with him. The judge takes time to think about all these things and comes back and says she is sentencing him to 12 months and 1 day with 3 years of supervised, is that right? 3 years of supervised probation afterwards, with conditions. The only condition she's not pulling off of the page, she didn't read them out for us, is not house arrest. Take into account the seriousness of the conditions, the act of the depredation. She cannot say that the court has done their job in the sentencing guidelines by giving him probation and letting him walk free. That wouldn't be paying for his crime. And because his crime based on a trespassing, they weren't supposed to be there in the first place. Him saying that he didn't know that there was a burial ground in that at the end of that parking lot means nothing, because he was already trespassing. He wasn't supposed to be there. So she cannot just let him go on probation. She also said she has no control over what a defendant and the prosecution agree upon. And so pretty much what Sean Anderson gets has nothing to do with him, and that's not part of her. She figures he'll do 10 months based on his good behavior and gives him through the holidays to prepare himself. He will, his misdemeanor charges, he gets 30 days, but they will run concurrent with his actual time. So she still expects him to only do 10 months based on good behavior. They do plan on appeals. His lawyer stepped down at the end and had the clerk of the court put his appeal in, and they said that they got him an appeal lawyer. So he will not get any credit for any time served. He's going to do at least the 10 months, if not the year and 1 day, and then 3 years supervised probation afterwards. The appeals, like, we've all got to just keep appealing this, because what they've done inside this court, and if you're not familiar with the second trial of Oregon, I would definitely say look into it, because what they did is they lost the first one. There was full acquittals, and so to the government that's a loss. So instead they run 2 trials at the same time, one for federal charges, and they gave these guys misdemeanor charges, and they run both trials at the same time. So regardless, if the jury just acquits them, they would still have the misdemeanor charges to fall back on. And so that's not what happened here. And what happened here is a lot like what happened to the Hammonds. You put a lot of people in the room, you give them a lot of charges to look at, and they're going to pick a lesser one to give to these 2 people. If you think that these people who found them guilty of destruction of federal property, that the thought that they were going to do a year plus 3 years of probation and it would be a felony, most likely not. And so I think, we've all got to, pass around that fully informed jury association information about your juror rights and what you can do to help our system, because there's a lot of things that are going on here, and a lot of these people are sitting on the jury and they're like, well, I've got to give somebody something. Just like the Hammonds case, where they're like, well, they didn't do these things, but we got to give them this. But they didn't know how much time that one charge was linked to. So maybe that's something we need to get into. We need to have these juries know exactly what the punishment is for these charges. So I've got to say, being here in Portland, it's a lot different than Nevada. I hope everything went well in Nevada today. I know I'm really glad that things are going so much better in their trial. They're getting truth out there. I heard there was a lady that testified today that there was not accurate court orders, so that's interesting when our plea goes to court orders. So there's just a lot going on, and there's a lot of people to keep in the rough, and we've got to keep supporting all these people. We've got more individuals that are going back to prison, and we've got to do something to right the injustice that's going on here. So thank you all for watching and spreading the information, and we've got a couple more being sentenced this month and then the following months. Plus he has a $10,000 fine. This is something that the judge didn't speak much of because they made an agreement to that amount. I know that they were asking for much more, up in the $40,000 to $70,000 range. This is an absolute ridiculous amount. And a lot of this, the restitution that they're asking here, I believe goes to the tribe. And they are using ridiculous bills. They're saying, we had to sift through all the dirt. They're bringing the tribe in to say they destroyed these burial grounds, yet they spent all this money to sift through the dirt and find nothing. So it's really confusing to me how they're using it on both ends, but isn't that what they do? They're trying anything. I did see Judge Anna Brown inside do things that were a lot better than what I've normally seen Navarro do. I've been hearing, though, from Nevada that Navarro is being a lot more fair in her rulings and not just everything for the government. That's what I saw as a lot more fairness from Judge Anna Brown when she told the government, we're not going to go with this terrorism enhancement because you're still trying to use the conspiracy against him, even though he wasn't found guilty of the conspiracy, which is exactly what they were trying to do to Eric and Scott in Nevada. They were going to still put them into the conspiracy, even though they were fully acquitted of the conspiracy in this last trial. And I know that, that they're using pictures of these guys in the trial against this tier 1, against the Bundys, and these men were acquitted of the conspiracy. So how, if you're not part of the conspiracy, the only way they can use those pictures is by co-conspirator statements and co-conspirators, and yet they're still doing this. So once again, we have no accountability, and we have to keep the word going because we have to keep the accountability there. All right, so that's all I have tonight, and hope to see everyone else soon.